Very good morning to you. Welcome along to OTBAM. We're broadcasting live from the Galway Hotel in Galway as part of our special feature this week on the Galway races. It's day 2 of the Galway races. Day 1 was pretty successful, you'd have to say, lads, wasn't it?
Hugely. Well, not for my wallet whatsoever, but hugely successful for everybody around Galway and all the punters, I think.
Over 20,000 is big for a race meeting on a Monday night.
Yeah. So is it always over 20,000 on the Monday?
I'm
or was
not sure.
the weather particularly good yesterday that decided?
I'm not sure, but I do think that Galway it does bring these types of crowds because it's not necessarily a completely pure 100% race meeting. It's a crack festival.
Yeah.
I was thinking of all the words: jamboree, gala, shindig, party, all the kind of words you could have, synonyms for what Galway is. But it was like we had a great story yesterday with that Jody Tannen winning that race.
I know. If only we had known in advance that that horse was going to win. So Ruby was on yesterday. We're doing a special every day from the Paddy Power shop around the corner, just off Air Square, on Prospect Hill, and so Ruby's in a competition with a punter. And afterwards, we said, look, I mean, Ruby's pretty competitive. He's going to throw out a winner on the first day just to make sure that his territory gets marked. 25-1 when he tipped it. A great white shark. And comes home all the money for it as the day progresses. Finishes in at 8-1. None of us made the trip from the seats to the counter to actually back it.
Follow the money at Galway. I think I might have said that yesterday. You got to follow the money. And the money really, that is a huge gamble. That is a lot of money being moved in the market. And I'd say a lot of that money was probably just win only as well. But she came like an airplane, like a wet sail, to finish and cotter them. And it's only her 7th win in her career under rules. And having broken her back and having steel rods inserted in her back, she broke her back 9 months ago in a schooling issue at home. And then her back then was infected. I'd say there were some dark days for Jody Tannen. Dark days. And her brother won the Gold Cup there back in March, and now she's won the amateur race in Galway. And I said to her yesterday, you hope to become the next Rachel Blackmore, and she was just thrilled to win it. And it's funny because Paul broke onto the scene here 11 years ago with a horse called Indian Pace. He won a big race here when he was only a teenager as well. So the Cork Tannens are all happy today.
Yeah, absolutely. You did speak with Jody Tannen after her success. Let's have a look at that now.
Absolutely unbelievable. I actually can't believe it. Even for Willie to give me the leg up, and for the owners and to have as much faith in me as they did.
Great White Shark, the name of the horse. Tell us how the race went.
I jumped off, and she can be quite free, so she actually wasn't travelling, and I was afraid to light her up too much, so I just sat and took my time. And thank God she had enough gears when I turned into the straight. I think there was only 3 behind me going down into the dip. But once she got a bit of light and gave her a squeeze, she picked up, she passed them like they were stopped.
Was it a blur for you?
Yeah. I think I'll watch the replay enough times so I'll remember it.
You've had a great year in the family. Paul winning the Gold Cup on album photo, and now yourself winning this huge handicap on the first day Galway races.
Absolutely unbelievable, but we have great friends and family around us, and I think it makes all the difference, doesn't it?
You've had a bit of a rough time. Tell us about the injury you had.
Yeah, I broke my back in October and I was out for 9 months. I had to get metal put in, and then the metal got infected. So I had to get it all taken back out again, and I had 3 operations, but we'll forget about that now, it's in the past.
Was there a lot of pain? Did you kind of feel like I'm never going to be in a race course again? Or?
There was a few days like that, alright. Now there was a few long nights and stuff, but she looked, like I said, I have great people around me, and it makes it an awful lot easier. And even to have Willie's to come back to there for Joe, that you know that he's there when you're ready to come back, makes it a lot easier.
There seems to be great camaraderie and unity in the yard there in Carlow.
Yeah, definitely. I'd say now I'll be throwing the tank tomorrow morning somehow. Yeah, no, they're a great bunch of people, and the amount of them that came to visit me in hospital and the phone calls and stuff. I know they're an unbelievable bunch of people.
Did you have much instructions before the race? Did you know what you were going to do?
Willie said, fill me with confidence going out. He said that he reckoned she had as much chance as any of them in it. And no, he said just see how you jump out and take it from there. He said try not to get into much trouble. So he filled me with confidence. I wasn't afraid to go the wide route coming up the hill. He said it worked for him the past 2 years, so we'll try it again.
And I think it was your 6th runner over rules, so you've had winners before?
Yeah, that's my 7th under rules, and I have 4 point-to-point winners written as well, so hopefully we get the ball rolling now again.
So what's the kind of ambition now for the rest of the season to get into maybe the next Rachel Blackmore?
I don't know, I have a long ways to go yet, but no, hopefully we'll stay in one piece now and get the ball rolling in, like I said, and hopefully get a few more winners on the board.
Well, Jody, many congratulations. You've been through a tough time and you come out with a Galway winner. Brilliant, amazing, well done.
We'll do a bit of celebrating, I'd say. Cheers, thank you.
Yeah, Jody Tannen there speaking with John Duggan at Galway Races after her big win yesterday in Great White Shark. Anything in particular we should be looking forward to today, John?
Yeah, well, we got the big, we had that horse, didn't we, for a day at Off the Ball, Ozzy Valentine, who was 6th at Leopardstown, and he runs for Aidan McGuinness in the big race today. That's the BMW mile handicap over a mile, 740. We have, 18 runners. It's very competitive. It's very open, but that's generally the day 2 feature here at Galway. So, obviously a bit of rain this morning. Good ground, though, generally. Like, the rain will get into the ground, but not too much. It'll still be, perfect ground. Everybody was very complimentary about the ground yesterday. And it was great to see syndicates. Like, I met Johnny Murphy after the Rugby and Racing Syndicate won with the second race.
Oh, did they?
With Linger, 9-4 favourite for Joseph O'Brien. So
right.
They were cock a hoop now.
I'm sure they were, yeah.
Because we spoke to Johnny, if you remember, there at Punchestown.
Yeah, cool, because Linger looked like it was not going to win until the final furlong and just zoomed through.
Yeah, won by 6 lengths, and it's a lot of it is about judging pace here, because it's funny because I came in here in a bus yesterday and I came to the opposite side of the race course, and you really just see the undulations. You can't see the winning post. You're actually below it. You feel like you're in a tunnel or something. And actually, there is a tunnel that goes through underneath the race course here. So you do need stamina, and you do need a horse. Sometimes you need a horse that gets 2.5 miles in a 2-mile race. You need a horse that gets 1 mile 2 in a 1 mile flat race. So, yeah, generally not too many shocks. We had one real shock. Galty missed a 20-1 in a 7 furlong handicap. Probably the best race yesterday was one involving Innisfree and Sheahan in a flat race. That was a flat maiden, and they pulled 6 lengths clear of the remainder. Both those horses were worth putting in the notebook. Sometimes Aidan O'Brien and Dermot Weld really campaign top 2-year-olds at Galway, and you wouldn't think Galway's a track for it, but sometimes they do that.
All right, John, good stuff. It was an absolutely massive night for Irish rugby last night because there was an Irish rugby winner at Love Island.
Apparently so. I was at the races, so I missed it.
So you've watched 9 months of this, or however, it's like 4 years of Love Island. You've watched every single minute, but you missed the final.
Didn't get the payoff.
That's mad.
I didn't even get a winner at Galway, so bad decisions all round.
Well, let's find out exactly how the decision was announced. Have a listen.
The public have been watching your every move. We've laughed with you, we've cried with you, but most of all, we've fallen in love with you. And now it's time to reveal the winning couple. The winners of Love Island 2019 are Greg and
Yeah, so that's the news that Limerick's Greg O'Shea is the champion of Love Island alongside Amber Gill. This was unexpected?
Not at all. Not at all, no. I think over the last week or so, he finished strongly.
Is he not just a blow-in? Did he not just arrive?
Yeah, he is the reality TV version of an 80-minute performance. Everyone get on down to the Walkinstown roundabout. It's a proud day for Irish sport once again this morning. He was a blow-in, but he made a great impact.
How long was he there?
I want to say 2.5 weeks.
Well, that's not very long, is it?
No, he came in and he was, I don't want to say he was opportunistic, but things fell well for him. Amber's heart was broken, and an Irishman came into the villa and mended it for her.
All
and in the end, he gets 25k.
Maura finished 4th.
Did she? Yeah.
That's what it says. Yeah.
Right. Well, good for her, and maybe get down to the Walkinstown roundabout for her as well.
So the one bit that I'm going to read here is Greg had the option of keeping the entire 50 grand prize money for himself after being handed the golden envelope, but chose love over money and shared the winnings with Amber.
That is a twist. I didn't see that twist coming. That's like that really vicious reality TV show game that they play in the United States, where you can either keep the money, you got to bluff the opposition in the final. So they obviously had to play that last night, and I'm glad he did the right thing.
Well,
not surprised at all.
I mean, it's good marketing anyway.
Yeah, he seems like a good guy, Greg. So I'm sure that'll propel his rugby career to the next level as well.
The best thing to come out of the Munster Academy in about 10 years? Joke.
No comment.
Right, Beltastic, Toshak sickened by wingers' antics. Wales legend slams Stars language. This is clearly the worst element of silly season. This is the Star. They have spoken to John Toshak. He's like, oh, maybe Gareth should have learned the language, and that has transferred into him slamming Gareth Bale. Juve taking the lead. Juventus last night moved into pole position to sign Romelu Lukaku. This is because Inter won't match Manchester United asking demands. Jody's joy at Galway Glory, we've spoken about that already. And Ref Clear is back. So the GA, the hurling referees body, has come out and backed, as you would expect, Sean Clear. Qualified backing. They said he did the right thing when it came to the Hawkeye call. They said they would be reviewing the decision not to allow an advantage when Tipperary did score that goal that ultimately gets called back for a free. So we'll be looking at that, which isn't exactly a backing. And they said, he's smart enough not to look at social media anyway. So a difficult few days for Sean Clear.
The Irish Examiner this morning leads with tactical strike. Cats hero Brian Hogan shoots down talk of strategies and sweepers. John Fogarty then has given us 8 ways to ease the pressure on referees. It involves giving more responsibility to the Hawkeye referee. Mike Quirk talking about coaching kids. Try more asking than telling, more listening than shouting. And Top Gunner, fans in for a treat as £72 million Pepe deal nears. That could rise to, well, it is €80 million, the deal for Nicolas Pepe, who's going to come to Arsenal, the second top scorer in League One last year after Kylian Mbappe. So he's a great signing really for Arsenal, who said they had a war chest of £40 million, let's not forget, turning out to be quite the strategy in terms of actually entering the transfer market. And the French connection, Ronan O'Gara is doing the rounds, hits the ground running as La Rochelle head coach.
The back page of the Herald is Reds closing Maguire. Lukaku sale key as United step up bid for defender. So it looks like Harry Maguire to Manchester United is going to happen. Clark injury agony. This is a terrible story. A dream day for Dubliner Trevor Clark turned into a nightmare after he sustained a serious looking knee injury just as confirmation of his move from Shamrock Rovers to League One side Rotherham was being made public. So the switch was formally announced yesterday by his new employers, and they were waiting for international clearance to go through on the 120 grand deal, but it later emerged that he had picked up an injury around that time in an under-23 game with Newcastle. Apparently he missed most of 2018 with a knee injury, so this is a huge setback for him. Hopefully it's not too serious. Front page story, Anthony Stokes, ex-Ireland star pleads guilty, stalker Stokes. So Anthony Stokes has pleaded guilty in a Scottish court and admitted stalking his ex-girlfriend and the mother of his 2-year-old son and her mother between July last year and last February using 6 different mobile phones, sending 100 texts a day on WhatsApp and email, as well as calling her a slut, a slag and a whore. Sentencing has been adjourned on that until September.
Irish Times this morning leads with Kevin McStay's column. Murphy and O'Shea key men in seismic showdown. Great piece from Kevin McStay today. He speaks about criticism of Michael Murphy. I know that there is this criticism because he didn't perform in the 2014 All-Ireland final against Kerry when Aidan O'Mahony did a number on him. I think Joe Brawley referred to that a couple of weeks ago on RTE as Aidan O'Mahony having a saddle on the back of Michael Murphy. We'll get Aidan O'Mahony's take on that a little bit later on. He's given huge praise to the 2 players, as you'd imagine they both deserve. He says, I have to say, I think Michael Murphy is extraordinary in his range of abilities and influence. Has there been a better footballer in the past 20 years? Not for me, says Kevin McStay. And it's a shout, for sure.
Well, I've been making that shout for 6 months. You're like, nah, it's ridiculous.
Not for the last. You were calling him the LeBron James.
Yeah, exactly.
Which means
best player of the last 20 years. Best player of the last 20 years.
If you're talking to me about LeBron James, I'm saying the greatest of all time. So I'm not making that.
Best player of the last 20
equation.
years.
Best player. It's a shout. Like it's up there. I think in terms of being able to do everything, he's right up there. Like, is he the best player in any specific position? I think if you put him into perhaps the middle of the park, he's right up there with Jack O'Shea if you want to extend it to the last 30, 40 years in that position. But could Jack O'Shea be versatile enough to move into 11, move into full forward?
Jack might have been, you know.
He talks then about who's going to mark him at the weekend. Lee Keegan, the man for the job, he says.
The Irish News, search on for new Fermanagh boss. Rory Gallagher has obviously stepped down. I wonder, is Rory Gallagher looking at some of the other jobs around the country and thinking, I might put my hat in for that? I wonder, would he be a shout for the Kildare job? It's going to be interesting to see who Kildare go for next. Crucial Donegal Mayo clash should be free to air, says Declan Bonner. He's saying that he's been going around some nursing homes recently and visiting people in hospitals over the last couple of weeks, and they don't have it on Sky. They'd like to see the game, but they don't have the option now. That decision was made way above where I am. You'd like everyone to see it. It's a bone of contention, but the GAA have signed a deal with Sky, and that's not going to change anytime soon. The viewing figures aren't there, but I'm sure somebody is making money out of it, he said. So that game is exclusively on Sky this weekend, the Donegal Mayo game.
The Mirror this morning. this could be a headline from any point over the last 6-7 weeks. The price is wrong. Inter accused United of asking too much for Lukaku, while the Reds won't be bullied into £90 million Maguire deal. Those sagas are rumbling on. The Gareth Bale saga is rumbling on. Bale's insults. Sick and Tosh blasts Star after move collapses. So this is John Toshak talking about how Gareth Bale hasn't exactly endeared himself to the Real Madrid support, to people in Spain in general, hasn't bothered to learn the language, hasn't even picked up a few phrases here or there. And Virgil van Dijk says we don't need new players. They haven't had a good pre-season, Liverpool, but Virgil van Dijk says chill out.
Exactly. Galway Days, Ballybrick gets ready to celebrate 150 years of racing. This is this week's Irish Field. Obviously, racing underway there yesterday. We'll be talking about that in detail a little bit later on.
And I think you're just finishing up with the Irish Independent there. That's the front page of their supplement on Galway. Great White completes fairy tale for Jody Tannen.
Refs to review Hawkeye intervention guidelines. McGrath goal chalked off after umpires told to allow score detection system make the call. So basically the umpires did exactly what they were supposed to do. Willie Barrett, who's obviously a Tipperary man, is chair of the National Referees Committee, and they said that they had instructed the umpires to leave any decision about whether or not the ball had crossed the crossbar to Hawkeye, and so the umpires did exactly what they were supposed to do, as opposed to signalling to the referee. And because they feel that maybe the Hawkeye person monitoring Hawkeye might have had a second look at it just to make sure. Meantime, ball's in the back of the net, and they're like, that was actually a point down there, so you need to call all that back. And then obviously that's Gary Rogers arriving in Baku after a 10-hour flight for the big Champions League game. And Munster will be transformed by Larkham, insists O'Gara, who also says at some point he would like to take the job. Also, the final big news there is that the Irish Open is moving to September next year, and that Mount Juliet is a likely venue. Mount Juliet's hosted the Irish Open before, and it has always been great, so that'll be no harm at all. Right, it is 3 minutes past 8 this morning on OTBAM, the Sports Breakfast Show from Off the Ball. OTBAM sponsored by Avantcard, powered by MasterCard. We're delighted to say that Connacht Rugby head coach Andy Friend and Galway hurling boss Micheál Donoghue are going to join us here in the Galmont Hotel next. First, let's hear from James O'Connor talking about the genius of Brian Cody on last night's Off the Ball.
That's this coverage that, everyone has a plan. The old Mike Tyson has you until you're punched in the mouth, and by God did they punch Limerick in the face and hard in that opening spell, and it really set the tone for the game. And even from a Limerick perspective, you can talk about the onslaught that's coming, and you can tell yourself you're prepared for it, but then it hits you, and then you realise you're in an all-out war. And so credit to Limerick for fighting back the way they did. But I think Cody will take massive satisfaction, as I said, from having the players physically ready, having them mentally ready, and up and at it and at the pitch of it, and then having a system just ready to give it absolutely everything for 70, 75 minutes, whatever it took. And the satisfaction, I think, that probably Sheedy felt as well on Sunday, that listen, it was a real test of character and a real test of every fibre in those guys' bodies. And I suppose, look, they take they take everything, I suppose, in terms of how they approach things from him, and the sheer honesty that they produced. He had to have been thrilled with it and deeply satisfied with it. And that said, this is not, a talentless team. And, I look for the game at the forward line, and you're saying, well, hang on a second now, Richie Hogan, TJ Reid, Walter Walsh, Colin Finlay, Adrian Mullen, probably the best young prospect in the game. They have to be respected. But still, it was just a real Kilkenny performance. And as I said, I think you're right, Joe. I think he'd have got extra satisfaction from this because, I think there were 14, pundits or whatever, 14 predictions in the papers on Saturday morning, and not one of them went for Kilkenny, and that, as I said, had to give me a bit of satisfaction.
James O'Connor speaking last night on Off the Ball. Now Andy Friend and Micheál Donoghue have joined us. Lads, you're both very welcome. How are you doing?
Thanks very much. Good, thank you.
You guys know each other a bit.
We do.
You've cross-pollinated.
We have, yeah. I think for myself, from my own point of view, obviously I'd have known Eric Elwood a long time, so when I got the Galway job, I would have met up with him and just swapped stories, or gotten some advice off him, and carry that on then when Pat Lamb came, and obviously when Andy came as well, and he's done a phenomenal job with them, and it's great to catch up with him, and he's a good sounding board. Yeah, because
I want to phrase this right, but sometimes there's suspicion within the GA community of anything outside.
Totally.
Like, I think of our own show, our own hurling show, where Shane Stapleton has been vociferous about what the Cork hurlers could possibly have learned from a world-class rugby proponent. I'm curious what you'd think of that. Like, My view on that is, why the hell wouldn't you be curious about stuff? Why wouldn't you ask people like Doug Howlett to come and talk about what their experience of it is? Because if every day isn't a school day, then you're doing something wrong.
Yeah, but I think the number one thing is, like, no matter what sport you play, every dressing room is the same. You know, every player, every manager, every management team go through the same emotions. And I think if you can bring in someone that's been an expert and really successful in their field, you know, surely they're going to add something to it. And look, we had that probably a small bit with ourselves with Kieran Donoghue coming in. You know, people asking why and, you know, what can he contribute. And like, he made a massive impact with us. You know, obviously, it's really, really strong personality. You know, had a huge successful career with Kerry, and you know, real infectious person. But he's a pure winner. Do you know what I mean? And he made a massive impact. I suppose the only downside to us, we weren't in the championship long enough for him for his role to grow. But you know, I wouldn't change it at all.
What was the specific role?
Look, I think when you know, when he came in, and you know, I don't think you have to formalise something like that. And then obviously, if you don't do that, you know, there's an awful lot of speculation into what he was. So it went from performance role to forwards coach to. Look, I think from us last year, you know, we reflected back on the year and obviously looked at areas of improvement, and we've seen some of that maybe for movement up top. And you know, when he came in, he was just absolutely brilliant with it, and it just gave us a different perspective. Obviously, we've Dave Morris. You know, he's a huge part of our team, and he probably is one of the main people in Corofin, and you know, so he done an awful lot with us on tackling and. You know, even some of the tactics from football, you know, so it's just opening your mind to it. And, you know, Kieran added a huge amount to it. But as I said, unfortunately, we weren't in it long enough.
Andy, what about you? Are you curious about other sports? Is that something you've always had? Rugby strikes me, rugby union and rugby league were always like, oh, these are totally different sports. But then about 30 years ago, rugby union was like, actually, they're very similar sports. Maybe we should be stealing some of their clothes. So rugby kind of has had that kind of natural sense of openness anyway, probably because a bit of it was foisted on it. What's your interest in this and take on that?
Yeah, I think, as Micheál said there, you never stop learning. And, you know, from Australia, we have a huge rugby league, AFL community. I've done traditionally a lot of learning in meeting up with those coaches. Rugby tends to be reasonably tight, so you can't really head across to another rugby club and have a chat, but very, very open there in the rugby league and AFL. But when I came here, it was I was actually really excited about, you know, meeting people from the GAA, and you know, great chat there with Micheál, and we shared a few coffees. And you know, as you said there correctly, it's the change rooms are very similar. We're driven people. We probably get that tag of being a little bit strange because we are head coaches, and we do pretty much your whole day, 24 hours is how can we get better? How can we stretch ourselves? How can we challenge our team to be the best version of themselves? And yeah, it's just great to sit down and talk to another like-minded person on that. And yeah, I got a saying there: if you stop growing, you're dying. You know, so you got to keep learning, and you know, having that opportunity to come in to talk to Micheál and others here, it's been really, really refreshing.
What's the AFL stuff that you're able to take? Is it specifically like kicking and catching? Is it more than that?
Initially it was. So when I was a skills coach, it was a lot around that. As you go through your coaching career, your mindset changes a little bit. So as a head coach now, it's more, and I did some work with Essendon and the Bombers, which is actually my team back home. Managed to sit down with them for 3 or 4 days before I came over here, and just looked at the way that they set up their structures, and yeah, just communicate. To me, the biggest things around language,
like
around
management structures and
management structures, but just the way they. You know, I think everything revolves around communication for me. It's how we communicate to our staff, our players. You know, the language that we use, the culture that we have. And it's just great to see that it doesn't matter what size budget you've got, and they've got a hell of a big budget, but it comes back down to the simplicity of the language and the culture that's been driven there. And so that was refreshing as well. Sometimes you look from outside and you think it's going to be really special in there. It's got to be different. It'll be like Man City. It's got to be different. Well, the culture's probably different because that's what's been set up. But it's the humility, the simple stuff that in life, in any relationship, whether it's a personal relationship, a business relationship, a sporting relationship, the simplicity of that language and the connection of the people is what makes it work.
Micheál, it always strikes me that the joy of the professional environment is that Andy can take time and learn that and instill it. In GAA, if you do install the perfect culture, it's for a short term only. It's like unless you're Brian Cody, almost every other GAA career is a 3 to 5 year window where you get your chance to install your culture, and then it kind of it's gone. It's a reset button.
Yeah, totally. And I think from our perspective, even you go away on training camps and maybe you spend 2 or 3 consecutive days with lads, and then you really appreciate what it would be like to be professional, and you're not forcing or rushing things, and lads are in an environment where they're probably more relaxed and more receptive to taking on information, and as I said, you can see the huge benefits of it, and as you alluded to, within GA probably is that window or that cycle, and what Brian has done is obviously off the charts, but he's managed, I think, the biggest thing, and Andy used the word culture there. He's created that down there, and that's part of their DNA now. But I think a lot of people in the GA would like more hands-on with lads and more time with them. But it is what it is.
Yeah.
You mentioned there that there's players that are receptive to information. Is that something that you have to teach within a group of players, or is it something that they have to have within themselves inherently?
Yeah, I think so. But I think you have to understand them, both as people and players, and how they take information. Do you know what I mean? Everybody's different, and as I said, because you might only see them for a 2 hour window on a Tuesday, Thursday, and on the weekend, it's trying to fit all that into it and making more time. And I suppose, when you look at management teams over the last number of years and how much they've evolved, and people go on about maybe the size of them, but you probably have more specific people there, doing specific roles, in terms of maybe analysis and stats and so on, that it's there. It's always available to the lads if they want to do it before or after training and stuff. But as I said, I think it's something that's constantly evolving. But in an ideal world, we'd like a lot more time with the lads.
At this time of the year for you, Andy, is it a sort of situation where the evolution is at its most pronounced because you're between seasons, or is that something that you're constantly looking to do between each game and every single day as Connacht boss?
You get a bit more time in the off season because you haven't got that, the weekend, the normal weekend routine of play, review, preview, get back on the treadmill and off you go again. So, we spent last week. Where actually the boys are on the down week this week. We've had a pretty solid 3-week block, but last week the front end of that was all around our cultural piece and how we worked on the cultural piece that we had from the previous year. We just adjusted a few things. We actually brought the academy in for the first time ever, which was great. We had 90 people in a room and committed to a promise, we call them, and then out of that selected our leadership group and a set of behaviours, which is all well and good. It's now about living that and making sure that we don't just put it on a wall. So you get that a little bit more time at this time of year to be able to do that. At the same time, you let loose the athletic performance coaches too, and they tend to get very excited this time of year, and they've done a great job. Our fellas are definitely looking forward to this week off, and they'll come back bigger and stronger next week.
That's the culture side. What about the game plan side? Because obviously it's great to have a perfect culture, but you need to have a style of play that everybody understands, and that comes down to your communication again. Installing that game plan, again, it's great. It's I don't know how high intensity the tackling is, or if you're allowed to, if it's full contact. How important is this time of year? Because you can't trial things in the white heat of battle, but you kind of need to get people confident enough to trial things in the white heat of battle, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, it's really important. So we call them our big rocks. So if it's in our defensive system, we've got 3 big rocks that, and real simple clarity around that. So what are the 3 big rocks that make our defensive system, Connacht's defensive system? In our attack, we've got the same. In our breakdown, we've got the same. In our forward pack, we've got the same. So this early part of the season is just about instilling those big rocks and making sure that there's 100% clarity with that. We've kept a lot of what we did last year. You must evolve. You must keep growing your game. So we've added a few new things in. We've had a bit of a trial period on a couple of different attacking shapes and things that that we felt after the season last year we could add to it. A few of them we're going to keep. A few of them, no, we said we don't think it's going to work, so we've tossed that out. So it's a chance to play with your game structure as well. And
is the tossing the stuff out decision quite hard because you've invested a lot of time and energy and getting everybody up to speed, and then you're like, that didn't actually work.
No, it's not hard. I think it's, but it's a reality of the game. Sometimes what looks good in theory and what looks good in on the paper doesn't actually work. And it's only when and we involve the players a hell of a lot with that, because through our eyes as coaches, sometimes it can appear real simple. But we're not the ones out there in the heat of battle doing it. So and then they come back and they go, that ain't going to work. And you go, well, how about we try this? And they try it and they go, that ain't going to work. You go, righto, it's not going to work. So what do we do now? And it's never about we'll tell you. It's about we ask the questions collectively. We then come up with what we perceive is, or what we believe is going to be the best option for us, and we cement that in. So as we head into this next little block of 3 weeks, we'll cement our big rocks in and our key structures, and we've got a game against Eoin in 3.5 weeks' time, and we'll give it a run there.
You get the opportunity to roll it out. Micheál, in terms of game plan for hurling, like how much do you realistically keep back for a championship, and how much of it do you actually have to trial in the league? And like it always seems like a curious dynamic where certainly there's a sense that teams are trying to keep stuff back, but then the hurling season is so condensed now that almost seems kind of pointless.
Yeah. I think no more than what Andy said, like, you reflect and review and then see what tweaks you can make on it, and obviously you're trying to implement those in the league, but I suppose down to player availability as well. Do you know what I mean? So if you're trying it with some new fellas that are just trying to get themselves ingrained in the whole setup, sometimes it's hard, but definitely you would be trying to look at some new stuff maybe in the league. But I think hurling it's such a fast game, like, as well. As Andy said, you can be trying to do stuff on the training ground, and then it just takes a life of its own once you go out on the pitch. So I think it's we'd put a lot of work into maybe counter measurements, or reacting to maybe sometimes what the opposition do in terms of maybe dropping someone here or there, or just mindful. So very similar. You talk about it, but ultimately it's when the players go out on the pitch, they have to take the ownership and responsibility themselves, and they're accountable for it.
Are you asking the players to spot when somebody's dropping, or when the opposition are making changes? And
I think so, because you go to Croke Park and 80,000 people there, like, for 5 yards away, they're not going to hear you anyway. So I think there has to be, the messages have to be clear and concise, and as Andy said, communication is massive, so they just take the responsibility of it.
There was a period on Sunday where Seamus Callanan ended up at centre forward, and I wonder, is that Liam Sheedy sending a message in, or is that Seamus Callanan going, this game's going against us, I want to get on some ball, I want to just show everybody that, like, I'm a captain, and then, like, I wonder how much of that is planned and programmed, or is that
I think it could be both. But in fairness, I think in any sport you always want your big players on the ball. Seamus, a huge player for Tip. He's their captain. He's on a phenomenal run this season. He's in great form, and as I said, I think probably at that stage when Wexford are on top, they probably needed him out there. Do you know what I mean? But I think he's.
And do you want your players?
He's wise enough to take the responsibility and ownership to come out.
So you want your players to be making that decision,
absolutely,
and you look up and you go, one of your players is out, and you're like, why is he doing that? Well, let's just give it a minute and let's see it. Do they have the freedom where you're like,
there's always an exception. The message you go out to go back in. So but as I said, I think that comes with massive trust as well, though. Do you know what I mean? And I think you have to create the environment you create is hugely important, and it was something massive for us when we come in, that the players are accountable and responsible, and you give a lot of ownership to them.
It seemed there was a tad of frustration from Davy in the aftermath on Sunday. He couldn't be too critical of his team, obviously, after their performance, but just how they reacted to being a man up. Perhaps they went a little bit too long at times. As I say, just a tad of frustration. Perhaps that feeds into it a little bit. He had the confidence to allow them to make that decision themselves, and perhaps it wasn't always the correct one.
Yeah, I think, like, with 20 to go, they were 5 up, 10 to go, they were 3 up, an extra man, and I think when you look at it, like, maybe, in a lot of games, for Wexford, the scores were, they probably ended up chasing a bit more, and maybe they were better chasing, but they were 2 phenomenal games. Do you know what I mean? And it's very, very hard in the heat of battle when you're down to the last 5 minutes. I know there's a lot of talks, even say about Mark going short. In the trust of it, you just want to keep the pressure on, and I suppose having the extra man at the back, you know, was something that stood them well. Hearing the game go through the lines, you know, they probably did go away from that, and that kind of stuff will haunt him, and you know, that's where he'll be disappointed. But you know, you can't fault their effort. You know, they stuck at it at the end, and I just think maybe Tip's experience, you know, and their calmness and their use of the ball, I thought shone through at the end, and their composure. And you know, when those opportunities presented themselves to take the scores, you know, I think in those situations it's so important to keep the scoreboard ticking, and I thought they done that really well.
Is that something that you can relate to, Andy, late in the game? Sometimes the structure loosens a little bit and the game plan doesn't get abandoned, but it's certainly not adhered to as strictly as the first 10 minutes of a game.
Yeah, I think you enter every game with a thought on what's going to happen, and invariably it never pans out that way. Very, very rarely does it pan out. So it's a very fluid existence that you're in. And my honest view on it is, if we're heading to the game and us as coaches get wiped out, the game's still going to go ahead, and they're going to do exactly what we felt was going to be the right thing for them. So we try and remove ourselves from a lot of that decision making on the game. And you know, you'll hear our voices from a Connacht point of view. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you hear a lot about, you know, our thoughts, sharing that with players. Thursday we tend to be a little bit quieter. Friday tends to be the players talk, and Saturday, this is your game, boys. So, but how that whole fluidity of the game, you know, how that presents itself and what we do, that's hopefully we've instilled their ability to read that and to adjust accordingly throughout the course of the season and the week.
Can you tell us a bit about the rocks, the attacking rocks? Because when Connacht won the league 4 years ago now, they had this great attacking style that really energised the whole country. Like at the time, the country was like, why can't the Irish team play a bit like this? And it was so exciting. And so many of those players became kind of household names in rugby in Ireland because of it. It seemed like you were getting a little bit back towards that ability to kind of strike from deep and to free the players last season. Is that something is that true? Is your attacking philosophy to be as wide as possible and to attack as often and as early as possible?
Yeah, it is. I think it's. To me, you got to feel the field. So the field depends on what field you're at, but maximum 75 metres in width. Now, if you haven't got a bloke on either edge, let's say you got them even 10 metres in, well, it's now only 55 metres that they've got to defend. So, you know, get your markers out wide, open up space, have opportunities to be able to attack in all different areas. And I always say there's 6 zones to attack. And I'll tell you now, a defence will not cover 6 zones. They may cover 5, but it's your ability to be able to see where that spare one is available. So we spent a lot of time on, we say, setting early scanning and using the right words to allow us to identify where that space is and then go for it.
And who do you charge with the responsibility to identify that? Is it everybody's job?
It's everyone's job. Yeah, it is. Now, Nigel Carroll's our attack coach. He does a brilliant job with that, and he works really hard on making sure that we've got all options available to us.
So if a prop sees it, they can call it and tell everybody.
They can call it, and then so we instill that power in the player. So if you call it and it wasn't on, right, we'll probably have a chat on Monday, and you may not be playing next week. But if you know, but you got that responsibility. You see it, and you go for your life. Off you go.
Yeah.
Because you can't have, you know, I think traditionally rugby's had, you know, they call it the game call. The game leader's the number 10 and the number 9. Well, there's 13 other blokes out there with, you know, 26 sets of eyes or 26 eyes out there that you're now not using. Give them the and keep it really simple. And it's all around. It's a numbers game, as it is in most things with sport. So if you've got 3 men on the short side, they've got 2 men on the short side. Guess where the space is going to be? But you've got to be able to call that.
And to empower them to do that. I presume that's a very invigorating environment for players to come into and go, okay, I suddenly have the opportunity to change the game, as opposed to just kind of taking a little rest here as the pillar at the ruck.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I go back many, many years ago I played, but to me the coaches I respected were the ones that allowed you to express yourself and allowed you to go out there, and they used to come in at halftime and say, what are you seeing, friendy? And I go, well, I'm seeing this. But those blokes back then were really rare, because it was normally the coach coming in and telling you, this is what's happening. You know, why aren't you seeing this? You're thinking, that's not happening. Like, I'm out there playing the game, it's not happening. So my whole view on it is I responded to those coaches, so that's the coach that I believe will get people to respond, and that's the coach I attempt to be and we attempt to be as a collective group. And I will say I'm absolutely blessed with the group of coaches that we've got and the players we've got. We've got a great squad, and they are really receptive to that and that whole word empowerment. Yeah, we do. We give them a lot of power. but they respect that and they use it wisely.
Do you think that's helping to create a culture where those players who are leading the conversation in the dressing room, when they identify those sort of things, are they the players who are going to become great coaches, do you think?
Potentially, yeah, and that's often the way it works. You know, if you try and micromanage everything, you're holding back so many other thought processes and so many other expressions of attack, defence, whatever it is. So we try and open the whole thing up. There are times when you've definitely got to say, nah, there's too many voices here, this is the way we're going to work it. But I think out of that you get players that they start to see a different game because they're asked to see a different game. They're asked to, to challenge their thinking on whether it's a defence or a line out or a restart, whatever it is. Where is the space? What are the options here? What's the hardest thing that you've got to defend? Why wouldn't we throw that back at the opposition? And you start to get them being creative, and then they own it and it becomes theirs. And I think some of the things we saw last year with the Connacht plays, the tip of the iceberg. But already in pre-season training this year, you can see blokes are wanting to try things. And I always say there's 3 types of error. There's a skill execution error. We'll work with you on that. You own that as a player, but we own it too as a coach to try and work with you. There's a knowledge error. Again, we'll work with you on that. So we've got to get our message clearer, making sure you understand what's happening. And there's an attitude error. And we don't have many attitude errors at Connacht. We don't. We have errors in our game, but they tend to be skill and knowledge. So it's the attitude errors. When you get too many of those, that bloke tends to drift out, and you might lose him at the end of the season. But thankfully, we don't have too many attitude errors at Connacht.
Do you have many attitude errors in Galway?
No, but it's really not really. I think right now, I think you try and create a culture where you have to understand what it means to wear the jersey, and we say that when you wear the crest and on your chest, there's a massive responsibility that goes with that. But it's really interesting listening to Andy. I think in any environment or any team you're with, success comes from when players take ownership of it. And I think that's the challenge. You might come into a group that are typically quiet, and how do you develop and bring them on to take ownership of every situation? And I think it's, and that goes back to your original question. Every sport's the same. Do you know what I mean? Every dressing room is the same, and everybody can learn from each other. And but I said when you get players take ownership and responsibility and communicating with each other, that's when you're on the right track.
What do you make of the debate around the whole? I'm loath to use the term sweeper system, but that whole kind of sense of there's a clash of cultures in the GAA at the minute. One which is trying to put itself forward as the progressive future, which is open to having fewer players in the forward half of the field and more in the defence, and then this old school which is refusing to countenance any of that. What do you make of how that debate is framed at the minute, and where do you engage with that?
I don't hugely engage in it. I think my own view, and I've always said it, I think your setup is determined by the players that you have. Do you know what I mean? And look, there's been a lot of comment, and I think it's 100% right. Especially in hurling, everybody wants to have more space up top. So do you create that space by pulling one fella back and leaving 5 up top, or can you play the conventional 6? But where are they situated on the pitch? And I suppose traditionally, when you think of that, people just took the half forward line, particularly the 2 wings, got 10 and 12 to come deep and leave that space. So I think a lot of teams do that, maybe getting 13 or 15 to come out, so you end up nearly having 2.5 inside. And look, I think the game has evolved. You can look even for ourselves. There's situations where you get someone maybe to drop, and you have someone sitting deeper, But I think it's how you push forward and how you're using the ball. And I think for me the biggest risk of playing a sweeper, and we haven't really, is when the game is there, you have to decide at some stage you've got to go for it. Do you know what I mean? So even if it's been, you're using it for a full season or 2 seasons or 3 seasons, if you're in a huge game, a big game like last Sunday, surely at a stage you go, right, we have to push on.
You think it's as simple as that?
I do, yeah. But look, I'd also agree that the game is evolving an awful lot. Do you know what I mean? I think there's always going to be you know, even say what Limerick did last year, you know, was massive. You know, they essentially pull everyone out toward the middle, but they're used to ball, their ball retention, and then their execution of using it at the right time. That went to another level last year.
Which seemed a bit like it was through the lines.
Yeah.
Football, Gaelic football influence, having really fast players running through in a way that.
But to do that, you need massive composure, and you know, if you watch Limerick, you know, and a lot of teams, when a team has composure and they use the ball, and you know, the player in possession is constantly looking up and can see the picture. You know, if you have a corner forward inside and he's pointing where he wants the ball, like that's nearly undefendable. Like.
Yeah, and Wexford had that for the goal that wasn't square ball, and so Wexford have a little bit of that and a little bit of something else.
Yeah, but look, that's, you know, in fairness to Davy, you know, he's brought that to it, and
as opposed,
you know, I think he's evolved it even this year. You know, the position of the sweeper. You know, last year maybe he was just on top of the D, where now it's maybe 25, 30 yards up, and giving him the responsibility or ownership to push on further. And if he pushes on, the other players around him recognise it, that maybe Diarmuid O'Keefe would drop back. So.
But this isn't a battle for the soul of hurling the way it's been framed, is it?
No.
This is just a conversation about what's the best way for me to use my resources.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's also what you said there. It's like the idea of a sweeper here is not to pack the defence. It's to allow your inside forwards in some cases to thrive.
Yeah, 100%, and that's it. Like, you've seen it with Tip. You know, in the last couple of minutes, like when you know, fair enough, there was probably a bit more movement, but they're used to the ball. You know, I think it's really important when you're playing it. You know, the number one thing is not to hit it down on 6, because that's more than likely where the sweeper is positioned. Like, so you do have to do an awful lot of work on the training ground on that. But I said, you know, in the last couple of minutes, I just felt Tip's used to the ball, and there's just composure to get the head up and see where that space was. And the boys were, in fairness, running into it, and then the opportunity to have scores came, and as I alluded to earlier, they kept the scoreboard ticking, and when they were right there at the end, they got the few points to claim the win.
Kilkenny obviously don't do tactics, but what tactics did they do last weekend?
I wouldn't agree with that. You know what I mean? I think they're masters at minimising the space at the back and smothering you and creating it up top, and you know, their work rate is just incredible. Like, and I think that's the one thing you have to admire about them. You know, for all the success they have had, you know, you have to give huge credit to Brian. Like, you know, every day they go out and empty the tank, no matter what. And I think they're very fortunate this year. I think even for Brian, you know, it's probably the first time in maybe 12, 14 months that he's everyone at his disposal. Like, you know, having the likes of Richie Hogan back, and you know, yes, he's brought on some, you know, some of the young fellas, and they've really stepped up to the mark. You know, the likes of Hugh Lawler and Adrian Mullen, you know, scoring for a young fella, scoring 4 points in All-Ireland semi-final the last day. Like, he's really stepping up to the plate and becoming a huge player for them. But you know, he had a lot of the old guard back, you know, that have massive experience, and they done a Kilkenny again on Sunday.
Do you make tip favourites for the final?
I don't know. I think it's very 50-50. As I said, I think Kilkenny have a lot of their big boys back. You know, they have a lot of experience there. So I'd say it's pretty 50-50. There's a huge rivalry between the two of them, and you know, the games really take a life of their own. And you know, I'm sure the chat and the text and the build-up, it'll be more orthodox game anyway, and so therefore, when it's more orthodox, it against the managers or coaching staff, it just becomes a shootout, and that's when it can take a life of its own.
How sickening was it to be watching the All-Ireland semi-finals this year?
Very, especially, you know, the last 3 years we were in them, and it was very, very disappointing. But I suppose the manner in which we went out, you know, going out and scoring difference was hard to take, even though we knew the permutations, you know, before the whole season starts. But it was a crappy way to go out. Especially
when you see how Kilkenny and like Wexford very, very close to being in an All-Ireland final, so you're not far away at all. You're scoring difference away.
Yeah, and look, we know that. You know, we're dealing with they're an unbelievable bunch. Like, you know, they've contested, you know, 12, 15, 17, 18, like, you know, so they're right there. They're right there, and I said they're a great bunch to work with. They're highly competitive, and you know, they want to be competing at the high end, and that's why it was such a disappointment. But, you know, in saying that, you know, they get a period of time off now, which they probably haven't had for a number of years. You know, they're all going to get taking holidays, and, you know, some of them went to the States and stuff, so to get a big opportunity to recharge, and hopefully that'll stand them in good stead for next year.
Yeah, because you want to make sure that they channel that and use that hurt in a positive way. So you have to address it and you have to talk about it, or do you kind of say, look, that's a line drawn under last year? How do you deal with that?
I think of course you address it and you talk about it, but I think there's big changes that'll benefit Galway. I think the changing of the club date, the club final, you know, and my own view, I think it still has to go back into a calendar year. But, you know, the fact that it's January, like last year, if you consider it from our own perspective, we're missing 5 lads from Thomas's, you're missing 2 boys from Moore and Mary, and you're down Dahi. Do you know what I mean? That was 8 lads you were down before you even started, and then, you know, with injuries or, you know, different lads coming back at different time, you know, so that they're big holes to fill. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that's something positive as well for next year.
Yeah, that makes a big difference. Andy, what are your expectations? Do you talk openly about what you want the team to do with the public, or is it are the internal team goals something that you share? How does that work?
Yeah, happy to share. I mean, we I don't think you enter a competition not wanting to win it. You know, we've said this year coming that we're in Champions Cup. We want to make the quarterfinal of that. That's going to stretch us, but that's definitely a target for us. For the Pro 14, we want to make sure that we've got a quarter final, and we want to make sure that's a home quarter final this year. As we saw last year, we got there, but it wasn't our home stadium, and we dipped out there. Every team that had the home quarter final managed to get through. So that's another target for us. Really important. We want to make the sports ground our fortress. So last year, we just under 80% of our home games we won. We want to make that over, and ideally it's 100%, which to me is actually achievable. No one did that last year in the Pro 14, not even the great Leinster. But yeah, we've got a great support group here, and we've got the Galway weather, which a lot of teams don't understand until they get here. So we got to turn that into an advantage for us, which I think we can. So that's a goal, and then continue to grow our Indigenous players. You know, some great work being done through the academy with Eric Elwood and his group of coaching staff and support staff, and we've got some really good young talent coming through Connacht Rugby, which ideally you get them into the green jersey of Ireland. You know, and we still hold a goal to get 5 players in a match day 23, if not more. So they're our goals for the year coming up. Pretty simple, and you know, we talk about them, we believe in them, and we strive to get there.
The Rugby World Cup squad hasn't been announced just yet. A couple of your guys are on the bubble, and it could go either way. And how players respond to being selected is obviously hugely important, but how for the ones who don't make it, and this is the same for anybody at Leinster and Munster as well, there is then an opportunity within the Ireland setup, because there's going to be a change in coaching ticket. Obviously there's continuity and everything, but there is a firm stop after the World Cup, and everything is rebooted again immediately afterwards. So that carrot for international selection has to be something that it's certainly their motivation, and you must be aware of that too.
Yeah, I think I think Joe's done an amazing job, but as we know, his tenure's coming to an end. So hopefully that finishes with success at the World Cup. That'd be great for Joe and for Ireland and everyone involved there. We'll wait and see what happens there. But that final whistle on whatever date the final is, I don't know what date it is, but Andy Farrell takes over. And if you've been in that green jersey with Joe Schmidt, you've done well there. If you haven't, a new man comes in, you've got to try and impress that bloke. So, as you say, it's a reset button. Gives everyone a fresh start.
Is there a noticeable trait or anything that the players are saying when they come back from Ireland camp, when they come back from working under Joe Schmidt? Is it a very different philosophy to how you operate?
It is a different philosophy. There's, we probably, so we have the big rocks. We give a lot of ownership to the players. I think because it's a national program, understandably, you have to be a bit more directive. Otherwise, you've got 4 provinces coming in with 4 different game styles. So, when they do come into that Irish camp, there's a very strict way of this is the way Ireland play. This is what we're about to do. So they've got to learn that. So they don't have the freedom and nor should they, because you can't get Leinster, Munster, Connacht, Ulster all tipping their 2 cents worth into the pot and saying just go out and play that. You can't do that. So probably the one thing that comes out is how intense it is, and how intense not just the training is, but the whole environment. That it's you're on the whole time, which is good, and that's what your national program should be. So I think Joe and the national coaches have done a great job with that, and there's a nervousness with every player that heads up to that camp, knowing that it's going to be tough, and you're going to have to be at your best to stay in there.
That's interesting that you say that about a national team not being able to do things on the fly too much, because ultimately you're in and out a little bit. Is it something that they can perhaps do now before a World Cup, that they can perhaps try something a little bit different, because they have so long with the players? This pre-season is so long, and then you have a full tournament as well.
Yeah, I think we're going to see that in these pre-World Cup games. I think I'm really looking forward to watching it. They were down here a few weeks ago to train. You can see the physicality of their games definitely increased. As we know, it's a very confrontational game anyway, but they've taken that to another notch. I'm just interested to see what other little options come out of that. So I have no doubt Jay Schmidt will have something up his sleeve, and whether we see it pre-World Cup, I'm not sure, but I'm looking forward to watching what happens there.
Are we going to get past this quarter-final this time?
I hope so.
Would you rather the All Blacks or the Springboks? Probably a stupid question.
Well, 16-all draw on the weekend, so one's a crocodile, one's an alligator. You got to fight them both. So I don't know. To me, I reckon there's 3 really dangerous teams outside of Ireland, and I think Springboks are one, the All Blacks are another one, and England's another one, and I'd put Ireland up there. To me, they're the top 4, and you get into a semi-final, anything's going to happen.
It's just unfortunate we have to play one of them in the quarters to get there. Lads, great stuff. Thanks a million for joining us today. And best of luck with everything that's coming your way. We're broadcasting live here from the Galway Hotel. We're going to have Michael Meehan and Aidan O'Mahony with us in just a couple of minutes' time. First, though, let's hear from John Kiley, whose Limerick side just fell short against Kilkenny at the weekend.
Yeah, we were so close on numerous occasions to closing the gap to a draw, and getting across the line and maybe finding that bit of momentum at the vital stage. I thought we were on the cusp of it. But unfortunately, we didn't make as much use of maybe the dominant periods that we had during the game to get scores on the board, and they just, by a very small margin, managed to get that one score more than us from their dominant periods in the game. And it's a tough one to take. It's disappointing, but listen, nobody died. We'll get up again tomorrow and we'll go again.
Right, you're very welcome back to OTBAM. We'll have former Galway star Michael Meehan and Kerry's Aidan O'Mahony live with us in just a couple of minutes' time to preview the big games at the weekend. Right now, we're talking about the Electric Ireland Minor Championships. There were some sensational games last weekend, as we had the 4 Electric Ireland All-Ireland Minor Football Championship quarter-finals and both minor semi-finals in the hurling as well. Galway put Wexford away 20 points to 11. While Kilkenny hammered Limerick by 12 points, 224 to 18 points. That was in the hurling. Some brilliant individual performances, but the nominees for the Electric Ireland Minor Hurler of the Week are Billy Drennan from Kilkenny, playing centre forward, scored a goal in 8 with 1-4 of that coming from play as Kilkenny saw off Limerick. Liam Moore, 4 points from play for Kilkenny in that game as well. And Christy Brennan of Galway, the cornerback who man-marked Wexford's danger man AJ Redmond in that game. That was obviously the Wexford team who'd won the Leinster Minor Championship. So you can vote away on Electric Ireland's Twitter account, and we'll announce the winner on Thursday morning. But we also have this week the nominees for the Electric Ireland Minor Footballer of the Week. The results of the 4 quarter-finals were Galway 217, Kildare 15 points, Cork 319, Monaghan 210, Kerry 112, Tyrone 9 points, despite the worst prognostications of the Kerry supporters at half-time in that game. And Mayo beat Dublin by 2 points in a thrilling game, 5-12 to 219. Going to have to split Mayo in 2 now after that. The nominees for the Electric Ireland Player of the Week are Daniel Peat from Cork, number 1, number 2, Luke Jennings from Mayo, and number 3, Emmett O'Shea from Kerry. Again, voting for that is taking place over on the Electric Ireland Twitter account, and we'll announce the winners later on in the week. Now, finally, we're delighted to reveal the full backline for our Electric Ireland Minor Jubilee 15 as we continue our search for the greatest minor hurlers of the last 25 years. Ronan Maher has been chosen at right corner back. His brother Paddy is our full back, and Tommy Walsh has been voted as our left corner back.
That's an outrageous full backline.
Yeah, not bad. Okay, right. Our wing-backs are on the agenda this Thursday morning. There are no Electric Ireland minor hurling or football fixtures this weekend, but the All-Ireland minor hurling final is obviously on August the 18th, and the football semi-finals are on the weekend of the 10th and 11th of August. As I said, Aidan O'Mahony and Michael Meehan are with us next on OTBAM. We're here at the Galway races with thanks to Paddy Power, and we're going to have a special lunchtime show coming your way today from the Paddy Power shop on Prospect Hill after lunchtime today with Ruby Walsh. If you're in the general vicinity sometime around noon today, then pop in. There'll be some special enhancements for people in the shop. We'll be back after this.
I find with the now increasingly brilliant Kilkenny players who come through this door and talk to us, so you'll talk to them and they'll say, but we didn't use tactics under Cody, it's not something we'd focus on. And then, Brendan Cummins showed in the Sunday game, the half-back line not going really, certainly not getting ahead of the ball and only very rarely getting beyond their own 65. Or you'll talk to Kilkenny players and the half-forward line working back, or the centre half-back maybe dropping back in the full-back, and they'll all go, yeah, but that's not tactics. Yeah. I actually just think they're doing tactics are these loftier things where it's actually just good common sense and not keeping players rigidly in a position. They've been doing it for 20 years.
Oh, there's so many tactics going on. Like, where you position players. Like, they can see the score and they decide, okay, we're going straight on top of Wally Walsh or TJ Reid for a puck out because that's our best chance of winning. The way they work the ball out from the back. So, just to reference the Munster final again and the difference between Limerick then and now, Tipperary went long on 3 guys who weren't really equipped to win 50-50 ball, high ball against Diarmaid Byrnes, Declan Hannon and Dan Morrissey. So Kilkenny knew there's a fair chance that those guys will win a ball or two. Tip weren't able to go short because they didn't have the right lads in the full back line that are comfortable on the ball. Kilkenny were able to do that. They worked the ball out. They went to Joey Holden so often, Paul Murphy, Hugh Lawler. They popped the ball up the line and then all of a sudden you're off in your motor and playing it into a midfielder. And they were, that's how you got your game plan going, because going long all the time doesn't work. Like, there are tactics everywhere, even putting Conor Brown and saying, just sacrifice your game completely to shut down Cian Lynch. There are tactics everywhere. Two guys going on TJ Reid every time he gets the ball and he wins a free or he pops it off for someone else to score. I mean, they're so clever. They've been the brand leaders for so long.
Yeah. Liam Sheedy there after the game at the weekend. I'm delighted to say Michael Meehan is with us. How are you getting on, Michael?
I'm great, thank you.
Galway Race Week. It's does it have happy memories for you, or?
It mixed memories, I suppose. It was always a great occasion to get involved with. Like, it's a super week. It just goes above and beyond the racetrack, as maybe you found out last night. But I suppose on a footballing side of it, the mentality was if you were going to the races, you were out. You were out early. You hadn't made a quarter final, and then there's a kind of a sort of a go with and skulk around the edges and try and hide a little bit, because there was a few years there where there was a couple of dodgy, backdoor games that didn't go our way. So yeah, it was mixed emotions, but it's just turned into where you meet up with a gang from college. Maybe once a year it might be the only chance you get to meet up outside of a wedding, and it's fantastic. It's just. It kind of takes over. It's as soon as it's over, it's nearly building up to the following year. So it's good.
Well, we were talking about 20,000 people there last night. It was absolutely rammed.
Told that it would be like the quiet.
I know
day.
that it is the quiet one. Yeah, it is.
How have you ever done like the Full House or the Royal Flush or whatever they call it, going the full?
No. I wouldn't be able to. A couple of days is probably as much. And initially, they would have hit a couple of big days. Ladies' Day, the Galway play, the Galway hurdle in the middle of the week. But it's kind of evening meetings now. Friday is a good one. It's kind of a local when Galway people or maybe people who went to college in Galway who are working outside of Galway come down for the weekend and clock in. So I think Friday was the biggest night there last year, numbers wise. And once you get the weather, it's just. The town is well catered as well. They pedestrianise, they extend the pedestrianised area as well, and it's a real festival. Yeah, no,
it's great. You mentioned the weather there. Andy Friend earlier on was talking about turning the Galway weather to your advantage. Is that something the footballers did? Because there's definitely talk about the wind in Salt Hill being a very peculiar wind that it takes a while to get used to.
Yeah, and I forget who put up stats at some stage. It was before the Connacht final on Twitter, and they had the conversion ratios. And Galway's were way down, in comparison to all the major stadia around the country. So it's unique. It certainly is unique. I never minded playing there as a player. I obviously you knew what you were going to get, but it was a good, fast, quick surface, and I kind of liked that. And the fact that you're in there, more often than everyone else, you should. Be an advantage, it is going to be an advantage. I think it has under Kevin Walsh's reign. It has, become quite a fortress, and it had slipped for a little while, before that. But teams don't generally like coming here.
Yeah, well, like you were reading out a stat before we went on air about Jim Gavin and
I'm
their
just trying to look
home
at it.
record and stuff. I guess home advantage is something that you can certainly make count on a regular basis when it comes to the league. It's something that's being perhaps brought in if we see the Super 8 as a stepping stone to something bigger, perhaps in future decades. And the home advantage will count for a lot more. But unfortunately, there's not too many counties manage to do too much. I'm not sure. Do you have the stat there? But
So Dublin have played 103 games under Jim Gavin. 75 of them have been in Croke Park.
That's amazing.
Wait, that includes the league, right?
Yeah.
In the championship, where's this now? I have another one here. I've done 103 games, and 75 of them playing Croke Park. They've played 36 out of 59 league games at headquarters, and 44 times they've played championship matches. 39 of those 44 have been in Croke Park. It's a bit of an advantage.
Oh, it has to be.
I mean,
it really is. It's
these
home
are good
away
stats.
from home.
Yeah. Well, it's a home at home.
Yeah, I know. And I was just thinking on the way in this morning about. I felt the conversation may be going here, but just a little bit. I suppose all you would want as a player, and it's in fairness, everyone wants to get out in Croke Park, but you just want fairness. I think you just want equality.
Yeah.
Whether you're a Galway player, a Donegal player, a Dublin player, a Mayo player, whatever it is. And now at the quarter-final stage, when you're getting to the serious end of the championship, and I just think the two games in Croke Park is a bit mental.
Yeah, and they had the chance to fix it.
Yeah.
And they left it, like, the powers that be left it to the Donegal County Board to come up with a motion. As soon as that motion was published, we all knew it was going to fail. Nobody stepped in and said, that motion's bound to fail because the language is wrong around it. Why don't we try this thing? And it became this kind of weird, stupid, pointless debate, as opposed to, it's wrong that there's 2 home games for one team and not 2 home games for every other team. Irrespective of whether or not that team is the best team, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
I mean, if the team was the worst team, there would be some like.
But if it was anyone, if it was Cork or Kerry getting that advantage, everyone would be kicking up a stink the same way. So it's just about that, about the kind of fairness.
And I do think it has a little asterisk besides the All Irelands in the future. It's like, the way when you look back at the old record books and you're like, there was games in the 70s, the scoring was wild, and there's a little asterisk because these were 80-minute finals. It'll be, well, Dublin won these 2 All Irelands, but they actually had 2 home games in the quarterfinals. Everybody else didn't.
I think, though, I'm not so sure because they're
a brilliant team. That's the thing.
They're super. They're
and
super.
The players shouldn't have to answer to this. It's not their fault.
And I'm sure they don't want it hanging over them either.
No.
But it's allowed to go on. But I think they're kind of hitting new heights from what I've seen so far this year, especially this summer. Now, I know you can kind of argue they haven't maybe played the top teams yet, and we will know a lot more come this weekend. But it's just some of their individual performances. Like it's frightening. Like they have everyone. Like if you were to pick 3 nominations for Player of the Year, they nearly have to have them all at the minute.
Yeah.
Now that won't happen, But it's just
Clifford will get one more than likely if he keeps going.
Michael Murphy.
Yeah, in fairness, there are lots. Like Ryan McHugh's having a super season as well. But just I think Jack McCaffrey. I think Con O'Callaghan is about to score 3-3. He's just that close to really exploding. Oma might be the place to do it, but I just think he's sensational and he's so dangerous and everything. Immediately when he gets the ball, he wants to go for a goal. That's what it is
60
for.
yards out,
And it's great to see. It brings everything to life.
It's funny. Jack McCaffrey has the same thing, and he gets the ball in the half back line. Like, ooh, there's a goal on here. As Kildare supporters, we're used to that. It's like, oh, jeez, he's about to score a goal here. Yeah.
What is it exactly about that? About what Conor O'Callaghan is doing, except for putting on about 1 million tons of muscle this year and getting bigger, winning his own ball. He's much better at that now. And I guess Paul Mannion, I think, has actually got even better again this year, despite having the season of his life last year. What is it about that partnership?
I think it's just, I suppose, more than any other county, there's a huge expectation on Andy Moran for Mayo when he comes in, maybe on Damien Comer if we had him this year, or when we've had him. There's a huge expectation on 1 or 2 forwards in teams, to really deliver. But Dublin, it's much more than, like, we haven't mentioned Kieran Kilkenny and all the work he's done in the past and what he's doing. But so they're being man-marked, obviously, and maybe sweepers will come and play, but they can't just look after the 2 guys. There's so much more going on. They have to spread themselves out. A back line or a defensive unit has to spread themselves around a little bit more. And I think you're right. The physicality, he's gone up another level. Like we saw him stitch that goal early. Was it in an Ireland final or semi-final 2 or 3 years ago, where he just turned and went from 45 in.
Both really against Tyrone and then against Mayo.
That's right. But he's just now he. There's kind of you can see that Dublin are looking to go direct that little bit more, 50, 60, we'll put one in here. He has the physicality to win it, so has Kieran Kilkenny. So they're just mixing it up now a little bit, that little bit more. We haven't seen too much of those long, direct, 50-ish balls in.
Yeah.
Like he plucked amazing ones the last day, and I just think he's a bit like Howard's step as well. Like he's like a centre in rugby. He can just go on the straight line, burst of speed over the first 5 yards. They can get inside. I don't know how they do. Like it looks like there's nowhere to go. The gap is that tight, but they can get through. And once you get through the first line of defence, everything opens up. And then like Mannion is just his speed and skill and twist and turn. And if he's sniffing around there, he's just going to give him a second of space, and he can pull the trigger. So there's just so much going on there. Yeah. But they're just two super players first and foremost, that can win their own ball, they can take on their own men, and they can score.
Have it all.
There was a league campaign a couple of years ago where, coming into the league, I think it might be 3 years ago, or definitely it probably is 3 years ago, where the team was being criticised for winning games but not scoring goals. And in that league campaign, they were having goal chance after goal chance but not converting them. Like they were getting 1-on-1s and the keepers were making great saves. Game after game after game it happened. But it's almost as if that work that they've been putting in over the last couple of years is now finally paying dividends, that everybody understands goal from far out, and the 5 or 6 players move, it seems, in perfect unison to create space and open up channels for them. So their game has gone on to another level.
Yeah, I think that they have the personnel. I suppose they always had the personnel when you had Bernard Brogan inside as well, one of the top forwards. They have the personnel to do that. Like they didn't convert everything like, Conor Callan, who we were talking about earlier. He would be unhappy that he didn't make the goalie work a couple of times in the last game. I think they flew over the bar. So, but inevitably, when you have that much pace and quality running at teams in Croke Park, the biggest pitch, the most spacious pitch, the one that they're used to, they're going to find the pockets. And they're going to create chances, and they have been rattling them in fairness, in the last couple of
like that Cork game. Cork did well, and conceded 5 goals.
Yeah, I was there, and it was like 61 or 2 minutes, and it was this is going fairly all right.
Yeah.
And credit to Cork for doing that, but I suppose you just got to remember it goes beyond that with Dublin. You're talking an 80-minute game. And they pulled away.
It seems like they almost have set plays at certain points as well when they're approaching their attacking setup. Like Kieran Donoghue was going through this on his shot clock a couple of weeks ago, where they almost set the play up on the left-hand side of the pitch or on the right-hand side of the pitch. The movement is almost basketball-esque, and they manage to create that space in behind the full back line. And also you see that thing that they've done for so long now, which is almost crossing the ball and they get into positions to create that high percentage goal chance. Like they have point opportunities there, and they're switching the play entirely to create kind of full-blown goal opportunities. It's incredible to see, and it is almost like set plays.
Yeah, it is, and every team is doing that or trying to do that, and the success of them then depends on the players involved and the clarity of what you're trying to do. But I think they're at that high level. They're willing to take these on. Their experience in high pressure scenarios and all the finals, semi-finals they've played over the last few years, and I'm sure they've tweaked them. They've had to with the defences that are being employed against them and the tactics that everyone is trying to stop them and prevent all this happening. So they're having to kind of be one step ahead essentially, and in what they're doing, and it's working quite well. With a work on Sunday, you have to expect there's going to be a much tighter game in Omagh.
What do you do if you're Jim Gavin? Do you pick your full team, or do you try and swat Tyrone aside and make them fear for their lives the next time you meet them, or do you give everybody else a game who needs a game? You gave everybody else a game last year, basically.
Against Roscommon and still absolutely pulverised them.
Yeah. When some of the best football that was played all year was played.
It's hard to know. I think
Paul Flynn scored an amazing goal in that game that no one's ever seen.
I'd imagine he's not going to make wholesale changes. He has had the opportunity in the last couple of games to get lads off fairly early. He's taken off a lot of the main players. Not too many of them have played full games. So I think he'll want to lay down a marker. I think he'll go strong and and just kind of keep them aside for and kind of sow that seed for maybe later in the season, because I think it will take a fair performance to get over Tyrone.
I might leave out Fenton and McCaffrey and a couple of the other
Sure.
key lads who are like,
And Kilkenny, and wrap the three of them up in cottonwool because.
And I wouldn't be putting James McCarthy back in just yet.
Yeah, but he has the luxury to do that.
Yeah.
Give Diarmuid Connolly his run.
Not yet.
Not yet.
No,
If not yet, then when? Not this year, then. By the sounds of things.
I don't know. It's very hard to read what's going on there. I think it's a good move. I just think there's probably a little bit of time to be put in. He's obviously going to be in great shape. It's just, but at club level, just bring it up to the level that they're at to slot in seamlessly. I think he'll probably need a bit more time. Maybe it is a chance to kind of to blow them, so to speak. But I'd imagine we won't see him till later. That would be my own feeling on it. That he'd be sort of just, if a game is there and it's it's in the balance a little bit, I think that's when you see him coming in.
All right, it's going to be interesting to see when that does happen. Let's have a look at our Specsavers power rankings this morning on OTBAM. In order, 33 to 25, no change, obviously, because nothing's happened and there won't be any change for the rest of the year for these. 24 to 17, no change. 16 to 9, Armagh are out to 12th. Meath move into 10th. That's their first time in the top 10. Jesus. Cavan are slipping out of the top 8 and they are into 9th. And then here's 8 to 1. Cork are 8th. Roscommon, Galway are 7th. Roscommon, Mayo, Tyrone, Donegal, Kerry and Dublin. Aidan O'Mahony, good morning to you.
How are you?
How are you doing? Welcome.
Good.
Nice to see you with some clothes on for a change. How are you getting on?
Good.
Kerry, the second best team in the country, according to Eoin Sheahan's always correct power rankings. Not so brave now when there's actual other human beings in the room, Eoin, I have to say.
What do you mean? I haven't even said anything.
Exactly.
I completely stand by
That's a big
everything I said
change.
there. Completely stand by everything I said there. Kerry are the second best team in the country, as far as I could see. Left it after them against Donegal.
I met him in Killarney. He wasn't too confident before the Mayo game.
No, I wasn't. They were out of 5 at that point.
Okay. It's a bit of a run. It's a bit like the bookies in Galway later. You'll see some of the odds tumbling. Get on it. I think you're probably on the mark there with Kerry, just in at number 2 at the minute. I could see a big final coming in a few weeks' time.
The big debate really is what happens at the weekend between Donegal and Mayo, because that essentially decides both their seasons. Donegal have a good season if they make it through this, but it's a bad season for them ultimately, a disappointing season for them if they lose this, right? If they don't go through.
Yeah, I think the last the Kerry game, I think Donegal kind of said to themselves, we'll win this game, we'll go to Mayo. Now the pressure's on them. Like that, the Mayo game is a massive game. And I think Mayo at home, your home game is always worth 3 or 4 points to you. And I just think Mayo, they've been kind of stopping and starting the whole way through the championship. And I just think for that game at home now, it's a huge game for them. And I suppose every person probably thinks that they don't have a chance. But I think it's one of those games where they're that team that will prove someone wrong.
Yeah,
I don't think they're the team to play Dublin in the semi-final. Because I suppose if you look at it, I think Kerry will beat Meath, and I think Kerry will play Tyrone. And then you're looking at the team that you want to play Dublin, and you probably want Donegal because of the system they have and the players they have and the players that are coming back. But I just think Mayo will turn them over next time.
On instinct, because it's a do or die game, and that's when we see this Mayo team. Or
Yeah,
do you think the matchups actually work in Mayo's favour as well?
It is, and they've been slow the whole way through, and I wouldn't say the matchups. I just think that the team they are they're this team that kind of they play above themselves when it comes to certain games. Even the Dublin games, and I've known myself in the last couple of years when I was playing, they were the one team that always played above themselves when it came to Dublin. They were a point away from the 2 All-Ireland finals, and now they're this team that I suppose everyone's writing them off. They came to Killarney, and I remember I was saying they has to be kicking Kerry like this. You're down in Killarney. And you're in your home ground, and there's so much being wrote about you. And I remember even talking to one before that game, and I was saying to myself, everyone was saying that, that Kerry were young, and that Mayo bullied them in the league final. And I was saying, geez, there has to be a kick. I remember watching that game, and there was a fierce feeling of pride, watching them that day. And now you're looking at Mayo, and you're saying to yourself, they played Meath the last day, they kept Meath in the game. There's definitely performance in them. And
there's the same kick in Mayo, basically.
Plus, I think the Rochford factor as well. Everyone's talking about Stephen Rochford, that he'll know him inside out. But if I was a player, and say for instance, if Emma Fitzmaurice was training Mayo tomorrow morning, I'd be kind of saying to myself, right, if I weren't on the team or if I was in the panel and he was involved in the coaching staff, you'd be saying to yourself, I'd play above myself now, like, because I think people look at times and they look at teams and they say, but like, I suppose revenge, whatever you want to call it, they look at teams and they say, right, Stephen Rochford will know Mayo inside out. But like, how would you know a team inside out? Because I suppose from me even looking in, you think you'd know that Mayo team inside out because the same players, you've one or two lads come back obviously, but I just think like their home and their support is like a 16th man as well, like, you know, the mass support now, they're a bit bitter at times, but
the only caveat is they don't have a great record in recent times at home. You know, they've won one, lost one so far this year, and just over the last number of years, they're not hugely confident or thrilled with the idea of. I think they'd much rather be playing Donegal in Croke Park, for example. But I'm sort of agreeing with Aidan. They've had their injury crisis much earlier. They've come to terms with it. They seem to have gotten through it, albeit they are missing still some key players. Donegal, you know, they had a couple of bad injuries. They, you know, before the Kerry game, they picked them up. Even, you know, since then as well, or you know, in the running. So it's just it all. It remains to be seen what will happen, but I think if there's a big fight in it, you know, there's no more team that love the fight than Mayo. You know, it's as simple as that.
It's going to be an amazing occasion, especially given one team has home advantage. It's like a Game 7 in the NBA. You win or you go home, and it's at one of the places, home venues as well. Kevin McStay in the Irish Times this morning, Aidan, is writing about stopping Michael Murphy, and he mentions the 2014 All-Ireland final. Joe Brawley was talking about it a couple of weeks ago. He said he put a saddle on Michael Murphy's back.
I was saying like that's a fair job putting a saddle on Michael Murphy, but you know he's a big player from in the last day. I think he's even harder to mark now because he goes back into full back line, and like if you're looking at your defensive structure, you're kind of saying, do I fall him down? Do I stay back? Like himself and Ryan McHugh the last day were, you know, they were just remarkable. Like, and there's some. I said at the start of the year I thought Donegal were the team that were going to come through, and McBrearty back and stuff. And now I just think that Mayo at home, I'd be just kind of worried that it might be a step too far from, because
if Donegal had their full team, like everybody available to them, even the players who stepped away, I'd make them strong favourites for this. But they don't. The injuries are just, it's that extra layer that you need of running to beat Mayo, I think. I can see why people are trending towards Mayo. Talk to us about Michael Murphy though, right? What were your instructions that day? What was your, and when during the week did you find out that was your job? Had it been lined up for months?
I suppose in the semi-final we played obviously the Mayo game, the two games, the famous game in Limerick and stuff, and I can remember talking to him and he just said, look, we're going to put Kieran for forward now for the next 2 weeks, mark him in training, and you're going to be marking Michael Murphy. I remember we used to do a thing like where we'd come in the morning of the game, and I won't say it was called a promise thing, but you kind of sit down in a group and you'd say to yourself, I'm here now with the group, what are you going to do today? So you'd be asked, like, what are you going to do today? So all I said was, I'm going to mark Michael Murphy, I'm going to mark Michael Murphy, I'm going to mark Michael Murphy. It's like 3 promises. And I can remember that game, I can remember a lot of the articles saying he was unmarkable, you know, that Kerry had no one to mark him.
So you'd read that?
Yeah, but like it fed rightly into me as well, like, and like I was 35 years of age at the time, like, so there was no pressure on me. I can remember the game, there was one stage in the game, I think after about 20 minutes, he stood outside the white line on the Hogan stand, and I said, he's trying to kind of screw my mind here, like, and I said, will I stay, will I go? I just stood beside him, and I just, the whole game, I just stayed beside him and just forgot about everything else. Now, obviously, I think he gave the ball, was a bit McFadden near the end and they hit the post, but like, I just forgot about everything else, and that was the whole game plan. It was like,
no ball.
Forget, well, I obviously was playing the ball the whole time. Well, I think Joe Brawley didn't agree. But that's all I did. And I obviously saw it that day that himself and Colin O'Rourke were having the chat about it. And he was saying, I put a saddle on him. But like, you don't put a saddle on fella. Like when you're a man marker in a game or you're playing defensively, you're kind of saying, right, go out there, mark your man. That's what you do. You forget about the ball. You just mark him.
Would you have done that with the role that he's playing now?
I'd have done the same, Michael. But I suppose the difference between him and you would have been, if you got the ball 40 yards out, like, you would have split the post. But you'd have a small bit of a chance. Mike, like that, he's this kind of loop player, and like he always has this thing where he'll get on ball, he'll give the ball off, he'll come in the loop again. Yeah. And I just remember the game saying, right, anytime he got the ball, he gave it off. I just stayed beside him. You know, I weren't attracted to the ball and stuff like that. Like, and it's one of those roles where you're kind of saying to yourself, am I in the game? Am I not in the game? And you just kind of have to watch him constantly. You know, he's one of those players like where he kicked a point in the second half, remember, and he was about 40 yards out, and I was kind of saying, I'm in top of his toe now, but he still kicked it. So
what more can you do? That's like, putting under pressure. That loop, it's like a Johnny Sexton loop. You kind of know it's coming. Everybody knows it's coming, and it's always successful.
McBrearty is very efficient at it too, as well. You know, they'll get him coming, and he's a great shooter from that range, from long range. And like, I don't know. I think it's going to be a fierce, close game. I on paper, you might think Donegal would just come in ahead of Mayo, but I just think anything can happen. It could, the only saving grace is the draw gets Donegal there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so that's kind of a nice novelty factor as well at this stage.
Is that in their heads though? Are they playing for a draw in the last 5 minutes? When
they're definitely not, but they just know that they have that added benefit that if it goes, it's not going to extra time, it's not going to replay. But no way, you can't play for a draw.
No, but like if there's 3 minutes left and they're a point up, do they start playing possession football a little bit too early? Because it just
chances are they'd be doing it anyway. If it was a winner takes it all. If there was nothing out of the draw for them.
They were the one team I watched last year against Dublin, above in Croke Park, where they for 40 minutes they had Dublin under pressure. Next they kind of stood off and kind of said, right, we have Tyrone out in Ballybuffet now. We've done 40 minutes here, and we'll go to Ballybuffet and we'll beat Tyrone above. And they got caught. And like I just think this year, I think they would have looked at the Kerry game and said, we beat Kerry above. I don't think they would have looked at the Mayo game.
Yeah.
I just think now they'll probably look at the Mayo game saying to themselves, you're going to Castlebar, it's a very tough game. And I genuinely mean that. I would have said at the start of the year, Dublin were number 1, Donegal were number 2. And now I just think that Mayo have been wrote off so much. They're at home. Like, there has to be a kick in the team where you're saying to yourself, like, everything is against them, but at the same time, Mayo have this thing where Donegal beat them in the 2012 All-Ireland final. I don't think they ever got over it. Like, when we watched them the year, I think they beat Donegal by 10 or 12 points. They absolutely hockeyed them because I'd say there was such a kind of scarring there, like that. They were kind of saying to themselves, this won't happen again. I can remember being above that game and I was thinking, Jesus Christ, Mayo are a different level here. And I just think the next day that I think they'll learn from the Meath game as well. Like Andy Moran's a guy, I don't think he's an impact sub. I think he's a player, whatever age he is. And we have a great thing about, I suppose, media and stuff where you talk about players saying, he's 35 years of age and like he's a great impact sub. But he came on the last thing, changed the game.
Yeah.
He's a guy you need to start because he brings something different where he brings players into it. He has to be marked and he creates space. And I just think like in above Castlebar next day, if you're a Mayo player and Donegal are coming to town and you've Stephen Rochford involved with him, like you just have to win that game. It's a no-brainer, like you have to win that game.
You got to feel like Donegal are going to maybe adopt the template that Kerry did and just, the squeeze on the kickouts. Armagh in the last game Mayo had in Castlebar was against Armagh in the qualifier, and to a certain degree, it didn't really work all the time for Armagh, but they were able to put a squeeze on at times. And I'd imagine if Donegal are to really go after it, they're just going to chase down the start of the game and absolutely squeeze kickouts. Like it's a tight pitch between the 265, so they can get positional presence from their half-back line, can step up in front or whatever it is, and just put David Clark under that pressure again and see what happens. And like with Michael Murphy, David Moore in the middle of the field, they're prepared to do that.
Yeah.
Is there a chance to just put Aidan O'Shea on him?
I wouldn't. I don't think, like, different colleagues spade a spade. I don't think Aidan is playing at that level at the moment. Like, you'd have seen him in Killarney. He was anonymous, I suppose, for a long part of that game. Like, and I just think Michael Murphy is a guy like this. I always say, like, if you mark him, you'll get on ball. Like, if you look at Sheahan right last day, he got a lot of ball in the first half. So I'd be looking at me, I'd be saying to him, right, if you want some player that has an influence, put him on Michael Murphy, mark him, and like you were saying, Lee Keegan would be your ideal guy because get him on ball and put him the other way. Like it probably works both ways. I don't think he'll be out the pitch as much because Castlebar plays tight.
Yeah.
And it's kind of one of those games where they'll put pressure on Clark to go long because obviously they've one of the best midfielding pairing in the country, like with McHugh. And I just think that, I don't know, would you be kind of sacrificing fellas for Michael Murphy? It's kind of, he's one of those players, he'll go deep. We just have to mark him, but at the same time, put some fella that goes the other way that he'll have to mark as well. Like.
You mentioned Andy Moran there, and the sort of way we talk about Andy Moran's age as much as we talk about Andy Moran. Like, that must be, I think it actually is something that he said openly in the past, that it's something that frustrates him, that as soon as you hit 33 or whatever age it is, straight away you must be in retirement mode. Like, I'm sure that was the same for you. You mentioned being 35 years old in 2014, then it must have been mentioned about you at the time.
I can remember Mark came in a league game, and I think Jack Connor was over at the time, and before the game he was playing centre forward, I was centre back, and I was told, like, sit back now and mind the house. So obviously when you're marking Andy Moran, you can't do either. You can't sit back and mind the house and mind him. So I can remember getting a half time next I think it was Ger Gilroy came over and said to me, sit down now, we'll take you off there. I was like, Jesus Christ. And Donny Buckley was involved at the time. I can remember turning around and saying, Donny, I said, Donny, I was told to sit back. I said he was winning every break. Every time I pushed up on him, I said the ball was kicked inside, because he's one of those players. Yeah. He's an influential player, like. And I can remember after the game, I was saying, Jesus Christ, I got very bad advice here. No, at the same time, I didn't mark him on the day, like. But he's one of those players like that. I think he needs, like, you're better off, I think, start him, because even all Mayo's games that they got to the finals and stuff, and even against Kerry, he brings somebody. I think, like, when Cillian O'Connor is full forward, he's markable. And I remember even the 2014 semi-final we played in Limerick, he's markable. When Andy Moran comes in, he stays in the D, and he's always a threat. He's like the man here beside me. Like, he knows where I need to win the ball here, and they're hard runs to win that ball, because you have to take your time, and you have to kind of, you're backing over, you're making lateral runs. He does that, and I just think the last day against Meath, he came on. He was involved in so many scores, and he just brings a calmness to the team as well. Like, I just think that instead of bringing him on, like, you need to start him and get as much out of him as you can, like.
Yeah. So you'd rather mark Cillian O'Connor than Andy Moran on any given day?
I made a comment to one a few weeks ago, and I don't think they've forgotten about me in Mayo since, like. But
what did he say?
No, they asked me about himself and Gooch being in the same par or on the same level, and look, as I said, there's a long way to go yet for him, like, you know.
Go on.
Oh no, like, I was asked a genuine question, like, geez, I'd take about 100 messages, and they were all Mayo people as well. I was asked, like, was that, you know, he beat the scoring record, and just like was he in the same level as Gooch? And I was saying, even from a club side, I can remember marking Gooch, and you were saying in club games, if you keep him to 7 or 8 points from play,
you've done well.
You'll be doing well, you know. And we actually drew him in the county championship now in 3 weeks' time, like, so I'd say he'll stay in retirement. But, like, he's just, like, Colin was a different player in that when you played with him, he always saw a play ahead of everyone else. You know, he was at that level, and I think Cillian, like, is a fantastic player, like, and I think a lot of his thing is that he's one of those players where you have him on the team and he'll always give you 7 or 8 points, but he's a bit to go. Yes, I know, I'm going to Castlebar towards the left, like, I can't say too much about him, but he's a good player, like, and he's young, like, he's 27 years of age, he's beaten the record, like, so it's a kind of
he's a phenomenon. It's just a different phenomenon. That's they're different. Yeah, I think
players.
It's a false comparison sometimes. All right, just a reminder, Specsavers, the official sponsors of GAA Hawkeye. We'll have more power ranking goodness coming your way later on in the week. Is there any chance that Meath turn Kerry over? Are we just blah 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 that game away? It's just done. Everybody looks over at Tommy, not shaking his head. But, like, is there, like, there isn't really. There shouldn't be an ambush. But this game isn't in Kerry, and it will be one last kick for this Meath team.
It kind of is that dangerous game, you know, when you're through a little bit now, and Galway got caught rotten with it here, for example, last year, 2 from 2, and then Meehan came to town and went to town on Galway essentially that day, you know. Yeah. So it's just the mentality of it now. I don't expect for 1 second the Kerry mentality will be allowed dip, especially with the semi-finals coming so fast. You know, you don't want to take a kind of a bad performance or a substandard performance, you know, that close, knowing that you're through already. So I do think it could be tight enough. You know, it's not a venue Kerry have gone to too often in the last decade or two, I'd imagine. So you'd still see, like, Kerry, in fairness to me, like, and going back to the couple of games, Leinster final, and since then, they have a few outstanding man markers. Like, it's one-on-one back there a lot of the time.
Yeah,
and they're able to hold their own. And
Conor McGill might actually be the best test that David Clifford has faced so far this year.
Yeah, so there's a couple of good matchups like that, but I suppose it's just you're expecting Kerry to come through there with a bit to spare.
Yeah. Okay.
We should talk just briefly before we wrap up just about your own Galway, obviously, this year. Disappointing campaign. What happens next for Galway football?
Yeah, I don't know. I suppose if you chart back Galway over the last 6 or 7 years, you know, where Galway were to where Galway are now, there's big, huge strides. If you look at it over a 12 months period, then there's been a dip, and I suppose it's just trying to get to the bottom as to why. I think, and it shouldn't be the case, but I think for Galway it boiled down to a couple of big players been out, captain amongst others, Damien Comer, Paul Connery, a few players like that, that just unfortunately they were key to how Galway play over the last number of years, and we're going to be this year as well. So there's a little bit of that. Where we go going forward, I don't know. I think everyone's probably going to just take stock and see, but I probably expect that next year they'd be looking to kind of build on the panel that they have. There was huge talk during springtime of so many injuries, but on the back of that, so many lads getting game time, which they did. I felt that coming into the championship, then just there was no consistency of performance. Their last game of the league was Tyrone, had a great first half, had a shocking second half. And then since then, London was staggered over the line. Sligo there was no, nothing hugely positive throughout that whole game that you could say, they're finding a bit of form here. And then they found themselves in the Connacht final, and they got clipped by Roscommon, and it just never got to a performance. And why, I don't know, but I'm sure there's huge questions for players and management just to figure out, because they'll be very disappointed about how it went.
I'd say Eoin was asking about the manager there. I think that's is in a roundabout question.
I don't know. Look, I don't know. I know Galway.
But I suppose
that's how you do journalism.
From outside looking in, from even myself, we played against each other for years. Like Galway and Kerry, they're footballing teams, and everyone talks about we'll say from my side now, if you look at Galway and the system they play and stuff, and it doesn't bring in, we'll say, their big players. It's kind of I was saying there one day, I know Kevin Walsh, lovely guy and just great time for him and stuff, and I'd always say the Pally was in the
Tally,
the first year was in, and you bring in a system and you play defensive. But I'm saying to myself, if I'm in that system and I'm a back, I'm kind of saying to myself, Jesus, there's obviously no trust in me here. And like you were saying to yourself, they're dropping fellas back, but you're not getting the best out of, we're seeing Sheahan Walsh, who I'd regard as one of the best footballers in the country, that there's times in games where you don't see him and you're kind of saying, geez, what's he doing, or what's his purpose, or what's his role in the game, and he's dropping back. Instead of, I remember the year we played Galway above in Crow Park, he kicked, I think it was 4 points played. He was just a threat constantly. Every time the ball came out. And I remember that time, and that being Curry Cross now, but that time we played Galway, I was saying they're at a level now where they're going to start pushing again, and they have the players and they have the forwards. And then I thought last year when they played Dublin, which might be an often to say now, that they were kind of happy enough to kind of get to the semi-final, and that they played Dublin and that they were there, and this year they pushed on. But I don't think they pushed on this year in that.
Yeah. The conflict in it though is that the game you're talking about there, what did Kerry win by?
I know that.
And then roll forward 12 months and Galway ground out a quarter-final, first victory over Kerry in championship in decades. So there's a conflict there. What do you want?
If you're looking at the underage and everything coming through,
I agree with you as well. I agree with you.
I just think from an outsider looking in, there's a way more in that team. That fullback Sean Andy O'Callaghan, I'd watched him in Dublin 3 once, and I said he was one of the best fullbacks I'd have seen coming through. And next year watch him, and I suppose Donegal, maybe a few years ago, there was a wall in front of him.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to watch them, because I just think those players need that kind of, I suppose, support, and that you go out there 1-1, you could probably say, right, if you're playing Dublin, you can't. But they have the players like that.
There's an element of Micheál Donoghue was talking about it earlier, about the withdrawing of a man for Tipperary. It gave them a little bit of space up front. There's times when you can use, if you're bringing lads back, it's with a view to counter-attacking. And that was some of Galway's best play over the last few years, was in that zone. This year, just the breakdown, it didn't function as well. They weren't able to get the ball forward as much. They had no fluency. I think maybe they might have. Paddy Tally had come and gone. Maybe they tried to change things a little bit, and they were falling between two stools, and it wasn't for pretty viewing. So we're looking for huge improvements next year. So I don't know.
All right. We're on tour, obviously, at the Galway races with thanks to Paddy Power. We're going to be bringing you a special AM at the races around lunchtime today from the Paddy Power shop on Prospect Hill, where we'll let you know how we're getting on with the new Ruby versus Punter series. And then later on, 3 of the 4 of us are strapping ourselves into Zorbs. Michael somehow managed to avoid being even asked to do this. Sometime around 3 o'clock, I think. Is it? Yeah. You've got to be favourite for this as an
I think Ali Canning is favourite. It's his 3rd year in a row.
Is it his 3rd year? Yeah. I didn't know that either.
You know the racetrack around here as well.
The undulations of it. Yeah, I've never done anything like this before. I just wanted to make it alive to the end.
That's when you're in the...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Will you have a GoPro on, no?
Well, there will be cameras there, yeah. I'm reliably informed. So we'll be bringing you that sometime in the
Might
future.
come up for sound, I think should be a
I
good
think
one.
Ollie and yourself are favourites, and we just want to finish. Right. John Duggan's with us here next on OTBAM this morning. We take a closer look at the Galway races. Here he is with a delighted Johnny Murphy in Ballybrit after Linger romped home. Thanks, lads.
Oh, it was amazing. We've been in this position this time last year, and unfortunately we fell at the first fence. So to get over the first, and then JJ got in a bit of trouble. They had a rough ride around 4 furlongs out. It was brilliant just to see him come home the way he did. So it was great, amazing feeling.
Talk to us about the syndicates, the rugby and racing syndicate, I see.
Yeah, we have, so we've got about 18 members, and what happens is we have 2 tickets to every Leinster home game, every Munster home game. They'll get access to tickets for European Cup games, internationals, and then they'll get 3 or 4 mornings on the gallops with Joseph, but one of the lads will come, so Andrew Conway, Keith Earls, Conor Murray, Damien Varley's involved as well. So we have a good crew of people, and it's great for a day like today to pay off at a big festival is amazing.
There was a lot of confidence behind him, 9-4. Was that your confidence, Johnny?
No, I'm not. If you put your money into something like this, you can lose it very easy. You don't need to lose it twice gambling as well. So actually I had a text from Johnny Ward last night saying he was a certainty, and I was like, right, we're jinxed. We're definitely jinxed with Johnny tipping him up. So but yeah, no, we were pretty confident, to be fair, but it's a tricky track. You need a lot of luck and running, and to be fair to him, he didn't actually get that luck and running. Now he got a lovely split up the rail coming up the hill, but 3 or 4 furlongs out he got absolutely clobbered twice. So we got the luck that we needed about 2 out to get us home, thankfully.
We had off the wall Aussie Valentine for a day there recently. You might have seen that, Johnny.
Yeah.
Just to have your own horse in the Winners' enclosure, it must be just such a rush.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm actually more nervous about any of our runners than I was about any rugby match I ever played in. You're playing. I know it's people are giving you money and they probably don't expect it back, but you still have to manage. You still have to manage it. You have to do it correctly, and there's a lot more down days than good days. But when you have a good day, it's so important that you enjoy it. And there's, I think, 16 or 17 members there today, so it really is. It's amazing to see them come home and pay off like that.
And Galway's quite democratic as well. Like, of course, we have a lot of big owners in Irish racing, but to see syndicates winning is really it's great for the game, isn't it?
It's brilliant. It really is. And to be fair to Joseph is, and I'm sure every other trainer, but I'm only involved with Joseph, he's so enthusiastic about syndicates. When I first had a conversation, he felt that syndicates were the way to go, and all different levels of syndicates. It's about racing clubs. He's a runner in this. I think that I think is about 200 quid to join, and then you have syndicates that can go up to anything to 40 or 50 grand. But there is something for everyone in racing clubs and syndicates, and when a day like today, it's worth every penny.
Johnny, enjoy the night and congratulations again.
Cheers, thank you very much. Cheers, John.
Johnny Murphy in great form there, speaking with our own John Duggan, who has joined us. He was in fine form, as you would be. A winner at Galway is a special thing.
I wish I had a horse. I wish I had a winner anywhere in my estate. Just to have any kind of horse to win anywhere, it would be just the best thing ever. So luckily, you're trying to find, maybe
Do you not get that buzz off betting, no?
That's like you're trying to find. I mean, I've had unbelievable highs off betting. Now, luckily, I don't really have them anymore. But I just think a horse, like a high winning on like the race yesterday, would have been amazing. There was 18 in that syndicate, rugby and racing. I think they go to some rugby games and then they go racing and to come through, and also backed as well, like a bit of money for it. So everything that could have worked out did work out.
Yeah, for sure. The racing kind of has these obvious crescendos during the week with the plate and the hurdle and Ladies' Day. Today has one big race in particular.
Yeah, this is really competitive. This is a really good race, actually. This is 18 runners in a 1 mile handicap. You got to be drawn low at Galway. Even the horse yesterday, Galty missed, was drawn 4. So if you back, say, the first 5 horses in the draw, he's 20-1. Think about it. It might have worked out for you. So, like, I'll just go through. I'm not going to give tips here, but I'll just go through the market movers in this race. Turnberry Isle into 8-1. A bit of money for Elegio at 40-1. 2 joint favourites, Jassar and Numerian at 4-1. A little bit of rain this morning, but not enough to get really into the ground. Ground just on the easy side of good on the flat track, but you need to stay up that hill here at Galway. So it's a competitive race. Get a good position and see if you can come home. Jassar, Dermot Weld. He's got a claimer, Ben Cohn, 5 off him, and then Numerian, Donegan and Joseph O'Brien. We know how good they are.
Okay, and doing well at the moment. The big win for Joseph O'Brien yesterday. He was obviously, as you were talking about there, was Linger. We're not going to give your tips now because we are going to do them on our lunchtime show, which is coming live from the Prospect Hill shop, the Paddy Power shop on Prospect Hill, which you should come down to if you're in the Galway area, because there'll be some enhancements for people in the audience. But we are going to get your tip of the day.
Danny's Boy in the 8-10. Rachel Blackmore riding in a flat race at Galway. Money for it this morning. Course and distance winner. Okay, has not been in the best of form, but if it bounces back to form, 12-1. Danny's Boy each way for the Euro each way today in the 8-10. But follow the money. There's market moves all over the shop.
Okay, all right. Stay tuned to all of our social channels for those market moves a little bit later on. Make sure you're clued into them. OTBAM is on tour at the Galway races with thanks to Paddy Power, and we will be bringing you a special Ruby versus Punter. The update on it, Ruby had a big winner yesterday, a 25-1 tip when he tipped it, so we'll see what the crack is, and we'll bring you the full breakdown on that show a little bit later on the on all our social channels. And remember to gamble responsibly. When the fun stops, stop. Check out dunlewy.net for more. We will be back with our lunchtime show with Paddy Power, Ruby Walsh, John Duggan and Joe, our punter, around about 1 o'clock. We'll see you then. See you tomorrow. Good luck.
OTB AM.
Brought to you by Avantcard Reward Plus Credit Card. Powered by MasterCard. Straight up better than your current credit card. Avantcard DAC is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.